Hey, 2 weeks in a row. We did it.
We're on the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on trend.
What are we, firefighters?
Yes. So
probably half the people that Paul and I played hockey with are either cops or firemen, I'm assuming. So
and I even have 2 players that played for me become firemen.
Oh,
so
nice.
6 points out, guys.
Yeah, yay, 6 points out.
Yeah. Weren't we here like this last year?
Well, last year they finished the season with like 7 more points than they have right now.
Yeah, they're going to they're going to finish how they are now. They're going to be a hockey 500-ish team.
Who really isn't.
What's that?
Who's not really competing. Like they're really enjoying that toy.
Wow.
Really enjoying that toy.
Wow. That dog is loving that toy.
Yeah. This toy right here. It's orange. What he was doing during the first half of the Super Bowl last night. And I had to hide it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to hide this in the middle of the table. Yes. What the hell were we talking about? Oh, Hockey 500?
Yeah, that the Flyers are going to a sub 500 team.
Yeah, so right now they are they 6 points back? They're 7.
Oh, my fault.
Yeah, 7. 7, and the Penguins have 3 games in hand.
Of course they do. Why would they?
They only have to jump 5 teams to do it.
I saw a stat today.
They're right in the hunt, though.
I feel like it's a stat that people are they're just fishing to try and make the Flyers seem as good as they're not. That Rasmus Risto is tied for 4th among NHL defensemen with 9 points in 11 games since January 17th.
On home days, on even days, against teams from the West Coast.
Like, are we just gonna not talk about the season of 2022? Like when the season started, are we just gonna pick and choose?
He's the hottest player.
I mean, look, I think Risto's played pretty solid. I think him and Sanheim. We've said this before. I think him and Sanheim have been a pretty good pair. I think they're a solid second pair. And I mean, Torts doesn't blow smoke up anyone's ass, and he's been praising Risto. Charlie's like trying to like butter me up here by kissing my fingers and everything. He's been praising Risto. He's been all about York, who I think has played really well. The 2 guys that I keep every time I watch them, that I keep being impressed, maybe not necessarily impressed, but happy with, is Frost and Tippett. I mean, Frost has high-end elite talent. Does he have the body? Does he have the game to be a second-line center on a really, really good team? No, not right now. I think he's going to be a really good third-line center who has really developed his two-way game under Torts, and the offense comes here and there, dribs and drabs. Currently he's got 26 points in 54 games, but looking at it, I bet you if you look at the last 20 games or so, I bet you it's pretty decent. Let me bring it up here.
So,
you've got
while you're pulling,
go ahead, Chris. The big loss today was Zach McEwen was placed on IR.
They've looked better without him.
Well, the big news was apparently there has been a team or two kicking the tires about Nick Sealer,
Yes.
and unless they're wowed, they're not moving him. That's at least the report.
Yeah, I mean, I assume you're talking about the 32 Thoughts podcast, which I listened to on my way home today, and yeah, I mean, he's only making $775. I said before that he's a really good third pair D. He's making absolutely nothing. He's signed for next year. You need to have those guys. You're going to have other openings next year. I mean, Braun's going to be gone. More than likely, Provorov's going to be gone. So, at least in a third pair, like you can't have two open holes, and you don't want to fill it with two rookie players like Zamula or Attard. What?
Sorry. Keep moving.
All right. Like, you can't fill those holes with.
I was going to call the pause on the two open holes and just moved on.
Yeah. Well, either way, I'm sure all the players were discussing all about that. But you can't have two rookies on your third pair D. You just can't, because they're just going to get worked. Because rookie defensemen, like they're so up and down and all over the place because they're learning.
But Paul, what does it really matter? I mean, honestly, are they competing next year?
Yeah, but it's not even. It's also not fair to the young D, because like in order for them to take the appropriate steps, they need to have a guy that can insulate them and protect them when they're at their worst. If neither one of them are protecting each other, I mean, look what Yandel did to Sealer. Like he looked horrendous last year until Yandel finally went up into the press box, and then he started to look like a good third pair D. So, like, you don't want to stunt the growth of both young D by having them play with each other. So, and I mean, again, they're not going to, are they going to contend for the playoffs next year? No, but they can't. They're not going to be. They're obviously they're not going to be tanking, because Torts isn't going to allow them to tank. And just like this year, they're not going to have substantially less talent next year. Would you guys agree with that?
Well, no. The only players that, I mean, the only way that you would have substantially less is if you move Provorov for picks only, and not a hockey trade, right? That's the only way that you're really
okay. And what if they don't move
not
Provorov?
shedding anybody? What's that?
What if they don't move Provorov? Are you willing to go into next season with a 30-year-old defenseman?
A 30-year-old? What's wrong with a 30-year-old defenseman?
I mean, what's he going to contribute?
Is he third?
Yeah, he's 29. He'll be 30 in June.
I mean, but again,
he's fine.
Yeah, he's not like Provorov himself is not the answer. The problem is he's a problem within the locker room. At least that's what it seems like. Maybe not like a huge problem where he's causing disruptions, but he's obviously causing distractions. And, it sounds like he's not like ultra well liked, and he's a bit of a loner, which whatever, if you're an awesome player, you can be a loner all you want, but he's not a top pair D. So in order to improve upon him, you need to move him. So I don't foresee him being part of the group. But I guess what I'm getting at is next year, are they just going to like sell off what they have and just replace them with young guys and take another year of losing? No, they're going to have tons of cap room. They're going to try to spend it. That's what they're going to do. Now, hopefully it's not Chuck doing it and someone does it in a smart manner, on guys that, have potential to prove it. Like if they traded for a guy like Brock Besser, who isn't ultra expensive and, he needs out of Vancouver. He's a guy that needs a change of scenery. And, if you bring him in, maybe he, rediscovers what he was his first couple of years. And, then you have a guy at a inexpensive deal that you're going to have to sign. But I mean, that's a good problem. But they're not going to be selling off all of their pieces.
No, but we started here with, are they going to be significantly less talented? And I said the only way that would happen is if you move Provorov for picks alone. We all expect that to be a hockey move. We all expect them to be getting something similar back. So otherwise, no, because they're not going to be shedding the guys that they're shedding are not really big contributors to the team, right?
Besides a guy like Hayes, and if they want to go ballsy and try to move Konechny, he's not going to get the kind of return that you need. You still need good players on your team. You still need good players, when you're going to be turning the corner here, hopefully. So trading him, unless you're getting something that makes a ton of sense, and this all started with Nick Seeler, fucking Nick Seeler. But Sealer's not like a closer in baseball when your team's bad. Whereas, what's the point? But if you're trying to be competitive, which the Flyers aren't the Blackhawks or not the Coyotes, they're trying to be competitive, because they did this whole thing wrong. If they did this 2 years, before last season, decide to tank it, then you sell off every little thing. But you're not at that point. You're not going to get the franchise players. So what's the difference? You have to just try to make good moves and improve your team as best you can.
So if someone calls and offers a second-round pick for Sealer, you wouldn't do it?
A second-round pick in a heartbeat.
Okay.
In this draft,
that's
100%.
That's what I see. That's what I'm
it's
talking
more
about.
Likely. Yeah.
I mean, he's only making.
It's more likely going to be a third.
Yeah.
Is what the offer would most likely.
I mean, he's making $800,000 next year. It's
nothing.
It's a serviceable contract. That's what I'm saying. Like, if someone calls and offers you a second-round pick, you have to take it.
I just don't see it happening. I don't see.
No.
And here's the thing, your second round pick for who's going to be calling is really a third round pick, because
True.
It's going to be between 28 and 32. And then if it's a third round pick, again, it's basically a fourth round pick. Yeah. So I'm not dealing for a fourth round pick.
Well, I think the talk is that you go on social media, if you go on Reddit, you go on Twitter, it's JVR, and then because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be, we want Sealer, and the Flyers will be like, well, if you want Sealer, you're going to have to take JVR. And
the Flyers don't need to move JVR. The thing is JVR is done at the end of this year, so it doesn't matter as far as the franchise goes. They're not moving JVR. They're moving him to get something from a team that's competing. They're not moving him to get rid of him.
You're not getting anything more than a second round pick. You're not getting a first round pick.
No, but that's not what they're hunting for.
Yeah.
But my point is that you're not going to have to toss in a sweetener unless it would be to move the round up or something like that. But you're not going to have to toss in a sweetener to dump JVR because the Flyers hold the cards there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you might be able to toss in, because they have 2 seconds next year, you might be able to toss in a second to make that second rounder a first. So it could be JVR a second for a first, but I don't think the Flyers are going to move on, because there's no point, in my opinion. There's no point. Just get whatever you can get and move on. But a guy like Hayes, that's different. You're not going to get a great return. Your return for a guy like Hayes is the cap space.
And you're going to have to retain some.
And yeah, I mean, years? but for the next 3 years, I'd rather be eating 1.6 or even 2 for for the ability to have the $5 extra million, especially with the cap.
Yeah, but at the risk of sounding, because I think we're both talking in these conflicting terms, but at the risk of sounding conflicting, I feel like you end up with a very similar type player in a very similar type contract with that cap space you get. Hayes is not a bad player. He's not a bad player.
It all depends. It depends who it is. And like we talked about last year with JVR, bad for bad. You're dealing one bad contract for another, and hopefully that they both turn out and turn things around at in their new homes.
Yeah. The way free agent contracts work, like if you'd have to be getting when you're dealing Hayes. I still even with retaining, you're just going to fill that up with more bad contracts. That's like when I see space like money, unless it's coming back in a trade, free agent contracts are just bad contracts. If you're getting anybody worth pursuing, you're going to overpay.
Yeah, 100%. So I think they need to build through trades, through hockey trades, and as we've talked about, Chuck isn't the guy. But I still like some of their pieces. I like Frost. I like Tippett. Tippett just shows flashes of just that elite power.
Why he was a first round pick? He was a first round pick, right? I mean, and you have an extra first next year, right? Not this draft, but next. They have Florida's first.
Yes, yeah. So it'd be 24.
So, I mean, you do have some assets for trades, but again, it highlights when we're talking about that stuff, and we talked about it last week, and I feel like we end up in this rut of like, how do we turn it around? Because that's all we want to do. But it highlights that picks for Ghost to get rid of Ghost, and then picks to bring in D'Angelo for essentially the same player, and it depletes assets to make moves. I don't know how, like it's aggravating. It's aggravating because like it makes it more difficult to really take a status on where the hell are you, right? We all agree it's not in the Flyers DNA to actually accept losing. But you need assets. You're not just going to give people nothing and get good players.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's where, you need to have, again, it's also positions of need too. I mean, if you do see, obviously they're not even using Hayes as a center anymore. So, if you deal Hayes for, a center, a team that needs a wing, I don't know. I just don't.
He can play center, just not for Torts.
No. Nope. I mean, that Nashville game the other day, he had 3 breakaways. He generated a ton of chances. His goal was straight filthy. Like you said, he's a good player. He's not a Torts player. And
this system highlights his defensive liability, right? Yeah. Like this system really highlights it. I think in a different system where he'd be rewarded a little bit more for slowing the game down like he does and having some other pieces, like he's fine. And the contract, I know it hurts right now because we're not competing in terms of when they signed him. When you look back, that's just the way it works. That's just the way free agency works.
I mean, what contract would you rather have, his or Duchesne's?
Well, I'd rather have Hayes, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
so there's 7 games now on the NHL trade deadline. What if they win 5 of 7?
The Flyers?
You're still sellers.
Still sellers, okay?
Yeah, no, because like you have the Penguins have too many games in hand, and that's really the big thing over all the teams below the Penguins except for Buffalo. Is they have 4 games in hand on the Islanders, 3 on hand on the Panthers. The Sabres have 1 on hand on them. The Sabres are 5 points back. The Sabres are the dark horse team, but like they just can't get any saves. Like they lost 7-2 to the Flames this weekend. They were up 2-0, and they have a young goalie Pekka Tuka, whatever the hell his goddamn name is, and he looks like he could be pretty promising a little bit, but holy shit, he just got lit up, and it wasn't like, I mean, a couple of them were like, bang bang backdoor goals, but he just got beat with shots. Now you're gonna get that with young goalies, but like, he was player of the month. I think he was a rookie of the month, and his save percentage was like 905, which isn't awesome.
It's not terrible, but
it's not terrible, especially for a rookie goalie on a team that's defensively lackluster. Put it that way.
defensively, offensively minded.
Yes, a good defense. Give it to Tage Thompson. That's their good defense.
Yeah. But I mean, look, goalies get hot, goalies get cold, especially someone young who's going to be riding emotion. Like it's a position that can be that way.
Yep.
It be that way sometimes. And maybe they do, if they decide they're turning a corner, maybe they do make a move for a name. Usually you don't see goaltenders still in their prime moving much, but
that's a weird one because like, what goalie are you gonna get? I can't even think of, John Gibson.
You never know.
John Gibson's the only one that really pops in my head because the Ducks are just complete and utter dog shit, and Gibson has not played well. I think he's just toast from the whole situation for the last couple of years. He's one of those guys. A new scenery might do him a lot of good. Now he's not going to get a lot more defense in front of him if he goes to Buffalo, but he will get a lot more goal support.
Yeah. Winning solves a lot, though.
Yeah, and he's a free agent. He's a free agent after this year, so I could see Buffalo going for a guy like him. But again, like, at what point are your assets? Like, do you want to give up all your assets? Which the Sabres have a lot of them, and I like what they're doing. They're locking up all their young guys like Thompson and Dylan Cousins and all these guys to like 7-year deals before their entry levels even up, because like the initial cap hit is like, pretty substantial. Like Tage Thompson is like 7, and he signed it last year, and everyone's, oh my God. Well, now look at him. He's got a 5-goal game. He's insane. Like, that $7 million is a bargain. It's a steal. I think he's making less than Hayes.
Yeah, right now it is, right. Like we've all been there. I mean, he looks great. I don't want to knock him, but it was right. It's 7 years, a long time.
It's true.
I mean, a big problem right now is Travis Konechny forgot how to score. He hasn't scored since his hat trick.
All goal scorers, they dry up, and then next thing you know, they got 3 in 2 games and 7 in 6 games. It's like Filipino with the Rangers. It's 7 goals in his last 5 games. Like, now he'll probably, now that they got Tarasenko, he'll probably score 1 in 7. But that's 7 in 5 games. He's going to be, and he's a free agent. He's going to be getting paid.
But that's when you start talking about those elite guys. That's what makes them elite. Is those the streaks where they're not scoring are short, and the streaks where they are scoring is very long. And the guys like the Konechnys at below elite level, but very good. Those streaks get more streaky.
Oh yeah. Let's see. I'm bringing up Tage Thompson's game log just to see.
Oh, he's been outrageous. That whole team has been outrageous. Dahlin's been great.
I mean, he only has 3 goals in his last 11 games, but he's got 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's still a point a game player. He still has 8 assists.
Yeah.
But he went from game 22 to game 37. He had 1, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17, 18. 18 goals in 16 games.
Yeah.
Like, that's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, look, it took Buffalo a long time. It took
Yep.
Buffalo a long time. Um, some number one picks, some things that didn't work out, right? It took them a long time, and they're still not quite there, but you can see that it looks like it's going the right direction.
They have so much. They have so much talent.
Got to
Darlene
solve
is.
that crease, though. Got
Yeah,
to solve
yeah.
the
I mean,
crease.
if you don't get saves, it don't matter how many goals you can score, and you have to have defensemen who play defense too, because Darlene doesn't exactly play defense. Um,
It's fun to
and
watch, though.
he's fun to watch. And Owen Power is going to be like a poor man's Darlene, but bigger, but maybe a little bit better defensively. And then the rest of that team, they just need defensemen. But it's weird though. I texted our CCM rep who lives in Syracuse, big Buffalo fan. The last game before the All-Star break, they played in the last game of the league before the All-Star break, played the Hurricanes, and if they won, they were going to go into the break in a playoff spot, and the building was half full. I'm like, dude, like, what is going on? Like, is everyone still hungover from the Bills choking? Like, what the hell's going on? And then I got a nice snarky response.
Well, I think that they're in a.
Of course, last night I got that choking text. So
I think it's tough when a team enters a very long period, and the Flyers are kind of in that. It's tough when you start to lose people to get them back. Hockey already struggles for mainstream fans. When you start to hemorrhage those people, it's tough to get them back
for a decade too.
Yeah.
I mean, think about 1920 when the Flyers were actually good. They didn't really start getting like legit fan interest until right before COVID hit.
I know I'm not the only one who caught that.
They had Nucky Thompson, You
said 1920.
Yeah. And you couldn't get a beer in a game.
2019/20. Okay?
I'm like, wait a minute. They're not part of the NHL 6.
It was the original 7.5. Come on, Chris.
But
Ben Franklin played for them.
It's tough. It's tough when you lose fans, right? Like everybody, I'm wearing a Sixers hat, but everybody talks about the Sixers in the process. And when you sit down and look at the numbers, the reality was when they actually that was shorter than people realize.
Yeah, but I also don't think you talk about the process, and I also don't think the Sixers weren't blowing smoke up our asses. They're like, we suck. This is what we're gonna do, and and you're gonna deal with it. And I feel like the Flyers and Fletcher, like it was you. I mean, I know it was only a couple of years ago, but social media wasn't as strong as it is now. And there was all the Flyers are doing this stuff. Like we all thought we were getting them. Like this, and then it was like, psych. Social media wasn't as strong as it was when the process was going.
Oh yeah.
I do think that they did a little bit. They didn't. Hextall was a disaster too, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm saying he was better. But I do think that when they brought Hextall in, there was a little bit of, we're not going to continue we have to restock the cupboards, right? Like they've been bare. We're going to change to a more modern way of addressing the roster. It didn't work, but there was a little bit of that. And then it was when they moved on from Hextall and they brought Fletcher in. It was like, all right, that's done. Now we're going to start. And now I just feel like every 10 games we're reevaluating who this team is, and no good franchise does that. You have a plan.
The problem Hexy had was he didn't tear it all the way down. And he should have. He should have torn it all the way down to the studs. That was the opportunity when your team was older. But the problem is like that's not Snyder's DNA. That's not the Flyers' DNA.
Yeah.
They were only going to let him sell off as much as he did. Basically, he basically only sold off and did a pretty good job of it. The bad contracts, the McDonald's, or they bought McDonald out, I think, didn't they?
Oh
But
God, don't.
Luke Shen, Le Cavalier. The fact that he got rid of Le Cavalier just blows my mind. He got good returns for Coburn and Tiemann. So it just his issue was a few things. His picks didn't turn out to be superstars. A lot of them turned out to be good players, but not superstars. He missed on some. Obviously, the Patrick thing was the final nail in the coffin. And then when he didn't gut the NHL team, but he ignored it. You can't it's not one. It's one or the other. You can't just ignore it, especially the goaltending position. If you're going to be competitive, you need to put a competitive team out there. If you're not, then strip it all the way down. So,
it's a rudderless ship. Like that's basic. We've not had a long-term plan for a long time. I feel like we're judging this team, and we've been in 10-game chunks, and not just like when it comes down to like, are we a contender and we need to make moves? That's fair when you're doing that at this time of year. But I feel like we've been looking at this team in 10-game chunks going back to when they brought Mrazek in because he felt like the team was competing enough to make a move for a goaltender, right? Like, I feel like that was it's emblematic, and it's two different GMs, but we're doing good. We're going to treat this team like we're a good team. And then when they lose 10 games in a row, it's like, oh, well, maybe we should start looking at dumping some players to get assets back. And that's where they're sitting right now. It's like, oh, we're 7 games out. Fletcher's job safe. Why? Why would his job be safe? I don't want to. Nobody can perform the way that he has in any job. I don't care, and have the results that he has, and not be either gone now or like the fact that he's being trusted at the trade deadline it's batshit crazy.
Yep.
I what's there to say? It's
yeah, I don't understand. How bad the Flyers have been since the 2020 season ended, and that Chuck Fletcher hasn't. The talk of him isn't really being on the hot seat, and I don't know how it's not.
When's the last time the Flyers have been in a conference championship game?
Isn't it when they went to the Stanley Cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had 2 kids.
Years?
I had 2 kids.
Yep.
I now have 3.
I had hair.
My hair was the same way.
Modell's was still open, Paul.
They were.
That's a long time.
Yeah,
That's a long time. One playoff series win in that whole time.
That's what I'm saying. Even take out the conference championship. Just talk about getting to the second round. Like it's unfathomable. Like how are we okay with this?
Technically, you got there in the
Bubble Boys.
Yes,
Bubble Boys.
Okay, so one.
Since
I won.
I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be the same unless they change the regime. The regime's got to go.
I feel
he's
like
been here for 4 full years. Like I don't get it. And he's been terrible for 4 full years. We haven't been.
No, Bubble Boys.
No,
yeah.
Stop it. Like, stop it. Like, yeah.
I mean,
cool.
His picks haven't been that bad either. Like, that's the other part, is his drafts haven't been that bad.
The problem is and it's why over the last 3 seasons since COVID, I just couldn't believe they got as bad as they were, because that team in 2019 and 20, like I get it was, a 2 month stretch, but they were one of the best teams in the NHL,
They're
and
probably the best.
Oh, they
yeah,
were.
and
They were.
and it
That's
just
why we got
how
COVID.
how can all of that just fall apart? And it's real easy. It's we all saw how it happened. Niskanen says, "No, I'm not dealing with this COVID nonsense. He's gone." And that was really the linchpin, because then that just sent Provorov off the deep end, and he hasn't been the same since. And having an unstable first pair, defensive first pair is crushing. The forwards are what they are, but not having that first pair is just debilitating. And you can't blame him. You can't blame Chuck coming out of that, because no one knew what was going to happen. No one knew what would happen. With the cap, you couldn't sign someone some big deal, and then you're totally screwed. And then that COVID year, he deserved another chance, but then he failed. Like, he should have been gone after. So what would that have been? 2021. He should have been
He
gone
should have
after
been let
last.
go
He should have
after
been gone last
season.
season. He should have been
Yeah.
gone. He should have been gone before the trade deadline last year.
Yeah. So
He
he
should
isn't.
He should have opened the box with a pink slip on Christmas in 2021. That's
Well,
what he should have opened up.
So do you think it has anything to do with his relationship with Valerie?
No, I think the old
they were-
heads.
Because
I think
they
the
were
old heads. I think the old heads are in Dave Scott's ear. Like, give him another chance. Give him another chance. Give him another chance.
injuries,
there's-
injuries.
Injuries, COVID, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. He couldn't have foreseen Ellis being hurt. He couldn't have foreseen. I mean, the Coots thing isn't his fault. But and then you have another faction, and this is part of the problem. You have another faction that's telling Dave to axe him and promote Briere or whoever else. Like, that's the problem. Like, no, like it's a split front office. That's the problem.
Well, and then you have Torts, and I feel like that
There's
also
three factions. There's three factions.
That's really the wild card, to be honest with you, because I don't know. He's a loose cannon, when you talk about like teams and staying on brand and what messages come from where, you have like Chuck saying one thing and then Torts, some straight out and some between the lines, says things that are contradictory.
Yeah.
And that in terms of like organizational health doesn't look good. Like, now the team hasn't looked good, so what does it matter? But this function doesn't look good for any franchise.
The team not looking good is opinion based. I mean, they compete. So as a franchise, am I not right?
I think that it's one of these things where, like, on a nightly basis, the players play hard. So when I say they don't look good, it's not fair to say to the guys on the ice. I think they try, they play hard, they have good goaltending. I think, but in terms of if you are actually watching the sport, they're just not good enough.
No, I agree with that. But if you look at the way the organization can look at it, well, they're finally competitive in every game. So like that's the next step. That's the way I'm looking. That's what I'm saying. And it's not false. It's true. They are competitive in every game. They don't have the talent. It's the reason why they're 1-9 in overtime or shootouts, because they don't have enough talent to win those games. They can't beat any of the good teams unless Hart just is, as Moses and just knocks away pucks with his thought.
Yeah, I just like the whole Chuck Fletcher thing. Hextall, he was hired in May of 2014, and they got fired in November of 2018. Like, are they trying to see, maybe he'll turn it around? I don't trust Fletcher going into the trade deadline thinking that this team's going to get better. I don't. Like, I don't. Like, it's irritating.
Well, let me tell you something. I firmly believe Hexy would still be here if
He wasn't crazy.
If he didn't alienate all the alumni and everyone else and only have a small group and kick everyone else out, just make it an awful atmosphere in the front office. If that didn't happen, he'd still be here, in my opinion. And is that
He
good or
wasn't
bad?
a likable. Yeah, he wasn't likable in terms of the people that had to work with him.
No, it made the organization turn sour. So
But he was a crazy son of a bitch.
yeah,
He was a player too.
yep. And you also have to realize guys like Homer and Clarkey, they all worked alongside Chuck's dad, Cliff. So that's why they have his back. But they need to go. They need to just move on and just be with the grandkids and everything. Just not be part of it. They can stop in, do whatever they want. They have an office, but they shouldn't have any say. They shouldn't have the ear of the president, vice president, whatever the hell Dave Scott or Valerie's official titles are, and that they actually do. They shouldn't have that ear anymore because the game's past them. It needs to be relevant terms. It needs to be someone relevant to today's game.
But what's Homer? He's a senior advisor. What is he advising?
Dave Scott.
Yeah, the state of the team.
But
Yeah.
I'm like, the games, they're not selling out as much as they used to.
At all.
At all.
Like,
this is the worst attendance ever.
like it's funny. Like, I get texts, and I mean, I forgot to reach out about getting tickets, and I'm like, you really want to go? I'm like, I'll ask, but he's like, well, I want to see Connor McDavid. I'm like, okay, well that makes sense.
We had people over last night, and I hear this thing repeated, right? And it's, I haven't been to a Flyers game in a long time, and why would I start going now? And these are hockey fans. These aren't, just your average person who goes, oh, someone threw me some tickets, I'm going to go down to the Flyers.
I mean,
it wasn't that long ago that they didn't have to sell single game tickets, or they didn't have to advertise selling them. This has been a really bad stretch in terms of service for the people that have, been there through some of the lean times. They've given up because they also, I don't know, I don't know that the whole experience has been that great for. I know individually 5 different people who have given up their season tickets. Some of them have had them for 20 years.
Yeah, yep. It was like, yeah, it's funny you bring that up, that people are like, I haven't gone. And my 8-year-old's like, can we go to a hockey game? I'm like, why?
Get in the car and go to the Phantoms. Get in the car and go to the Phantoms. Seriously, you'll have a better time.
Well, but I get what you're saying, but she's 8. It's as opposed to a 20-minute drive because traffic. Nobody's going to the game. There won't be traffic. Parking, I can park right up front. Like it's
for $22.
I park at Jetro. I park for free. I just gotta walk as long as it's not raining. But it's funny, and I'm like, you have my 8-year-old asking, and I'm like, oh. Do I really reach out to my contact and ask for tickets? Like, I don't ugh. I'm like, you have cheer or something. Like, I make up a story because it's just not fun. Like, and like you said, like, it's an atmosphere. Like, hockey is an atmosphere game, and when there's 9,000 people in it, it's not.
It's dead.
It's dead. It's not fun.
They've done all the arena people they've done all they can to try to change what they can control. And they've done much better of trying to win fans back by doing certain things. But the problem is that you're way too late doing this. You alienated an entire fan base besides the on ice product, but all the other stuff. So, like, you now have lost them until the team's good. It's just the way it is.
As much as I would like to stay and rip the Flyers, I have to go pick up my child at Ryan.
Yeah, I have to get going to practice too.
All right. Then we will wrap up here, guys. It's been real. It's been fun, but the Flyers aren't really fun. We'll be back next week to also just watch me freak out about why Chuck Fletcher.
Maybe we can talk about the teams that are actually in the playoffs or challenging for the playoffs.
No, I like to come back and just continually rip the Flyers.
Yeah. Chuckathon.
Right.
Hey, listen.
Yep.
Pitchers and catchers in 3 days.
Which one are you?
Sixers are on.
I'm leaving.
All right. Good night. We'll be back next week, 7:30, Monday nights. Till then.